Hey folks, it's me, Spider, once again coming at you with another creator video. And I don't really know the order on which I'm uploading these in, but I'm assuming that this is one of the first. Either way, that doesn't matter. Without further ado, this is every rated Mask463 or 463, however you prefer saying it, level. Now, I'll be honest, I honestly was like, I really just want to do a video on like one of these on like older creators, and I really do love doing that. So, you know, who else do we have on the list, right? And what better than the person who has made infamous level StarQuake, crazy, like probably maybe someone's 10th demon Crescendo, and then Apocalypse Eve. Yeah. Now, that is not going to say that is the only 3 levels that this person has created and just they disappeared off the face of the earth. No, they actually made not only levels like Surrealism and Katapult, which I guess are more of the underplayed ones in a sense, right? Not many. I'm just saying, not many people have played those ones as much as like Crescendo. I think they're still pretty good levels that are worth checking out, but I'll really get into that review part later. And yeah, I really do hope you guys enjoy this. This one, while it isn't as flashy as like new creators or anything like that, I think it's still worth maybe watching, maybe seeing how you do certain bits or or what icons I use, because I never really have a permanent set. Either way, I'm done waffling for this one. I'll see you guys at the end for the good old classic review. And yeah, basically it right there. So, you know, without further ado, please enjoy the video. say, folks. Quite the levels, honestly. You know. Yeah, quite the levels. You know, I definitely had some fun doing these, and that's kind of really saying a lot. But you know, let's just hop into it. First off, before we really get into it, I guess I kind of did have a couple. I did like Katapult. Katapult was really fun for me. I really don't know why, but it was. Surrealism as well. I like Surrealism. Can you tell? I mentioned them in the intro. I was like, hold on, we gotta save that for the outro review bit portion. Yeah. So I guess I won't even stall. Let's get right into the results. Honestly, now I guess we're gonna start with decoration, and yes, the decoration is extremely dated, but I'm going to judge the decoration for its time. Because if I judge it in today's standards, then it'd be like, I don't know, it'd be like a 3 out of 10, like try harder or something like that. I don't know, but I'll judge it. I'll judge it for its time. Now, what for the earlier levels, like maybe like the first 10 or so, it was they were definitely levels, right? Like even for back then, it was like it was definitely whatever. Nothing too crazy, nothing too fancy. But as it was playing, like, you know, the newer ones in quotations or whatever, it did get a little more interesting. I really did like the second to last level, which I think was World's Coexistence or something like that. I think it was a nice one. I do enjoy those like weird older levels that I don't know how to explain it. They just have a different vibe to like your usual early levels that I don't know how to explain it, but I did like that one a lot. It was some nice deco. It was a, you know, usual like black background, and it had some weird gameplay, and, you know, save the gameplay bit for later, but there is that. So if I had to rank the decoration, I'm going to say for its time in the early levels, unfortunately hurt its score just a little bit, but I'm going to be nice. For the decoration of its time, I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. And I hate to say it, but if the decoration for back then, and I get it, there wasn't a lot you could really do, but still, you probably could have done something, right? If the older some of his first couple of levels were, how do I put it? I guess it had a little bit more like, you know, like I'm gonna really beat it into you that this could be something cool, then I think it would be like at least an 8 out of 10. But because of the earlier levels, because the newer ones I did like I couldn't complain about their decoration, especially for its time. But the older ones, I think you could have done something a little more than just the same like 3 pillars, or you could have made something really cool. But I don't know. What do I know, right? So yeah, the decoration ultimately gets a 7.5 out of 10, and I'm being generous with it, you know, because of the time and whatnot. Now for the decoration. Did I say decoration? I think I did. Gameplay. Yeah. Pause. Gameplay. Now, I don't really know how I feel about gameplay too much, because my biggest pet peeve per se is just, I guess it's not like, because here's the thing, if you practice the levels, then it's like, you know, like certain ridiculous points are coming, like with random blind jumps and whatnot. It like those could really hinder. I really don't like random blind jumps. Okay, I'll say it. Nobody does. But if you play it in practice, you know, practice makes perfect. You know, set the ego down, practice it, type deal. Then it's whatever. So, for gameplay, like as far as overall, because when he cooked, like this guy cooked right on the gameplay. I feel to an extent. I'm not gonna give them a 10 out of 10 because the one level I really disliked was StarQuake II, the sequel to infamous level StarQuake. That gameplay low-key had me kind of mad because it's like you really just love blind jumps and shooting through walls and all of this, that, and the third. I don't like. It was definitely like last, like maybe I think it was like 50, so it was like 80 or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember, but that had me mauling, and I don't really know why. But no, I do know why. It was the reasons I listed. Yep, StarQuake 2 single-handedly will move the gameplay to an 8 out of 10. That a whole 2 points down. I couldn't believe it, but there also aren't a lot of levels to judge, so I guess it would make sense for it to quite drastically hurt the score. And what's crazy is the other level, like, you would think like levels like World's Coexistence, or Chains of Spacetime, you would think that those levels would be like, oh man, I think Spider won't like these ones. Yeah, I thought they were fine. It's freaking StarQuake 2. I really don't know why StarQuake 2 was really stupid like that. But it was. So, by all accounts, it must knock the score to an 8 out of 10. And, yeah, I think that's going to do it. I think not Gel, I'm going to save that. We're saving him for later. Mask did a good job for the levels for their time. Like, a lot of them, I guess, aren't like anything special, but at the same time, they're very memorable in their own way. They're an icon of a level for their time, and that you can't really take away. And I think that's really admirable and pretty cool. So, yep, that's gonna do it for my yapping session. As you can all tell, I don't have a script ever. I just say what's on my mind, and that's kind of it. So, yep, it's gonna do it for this one, guys. Like and subscribe if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, and I'm gonna see you guys in whatever I do next, because if I have to repeat myself again, it's like beating a dead horse. So, yep, catch you guys in whatever video ends up coming out next in this giant Funapalooza thing I have going on. So, yep, take it easy, guys. See ya.